Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Truckers of Reddit. What's the scariest, creepiest, or what the F thing you've seen while out at a truck stop or on the road? Please remember to like, share, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe. Came down a hill with a full load of grain, gross weight around 86,000 pounds, and rounded a curve, doing somewhere close to 60 mph. Dead ahead about 100 yards was a narrow bridge, and sitting in my lane, in the middle of the bridge, were several people in lawn chairs with coolers scattered around and fishing lines tossed over the side. I laid on the air horn and hit the tractor and trailer brakes and stopped about 15 feet from the lawn chairs. The people had already shit their pants and were standing next to the bridge railing. I asked if they had noticed the "No Fishing Off Bridge" signs posted on both ends of the bridge, and one of them answered, "We seen 'em, but we didn't know you was gonna be coming this way." I just rolled up the window and pulled away. I own a truck, but just do RV around. One night in Oklahoma, I stopped to take a poo, pulled in, parked, and walked in, settled into a stall when the door opens and closes quickly. A quiet Spanish-accented man says, "Do you know who sing this song?" No bro. Sorry, no sorry." And he's gone. And that's the night I turned down Mexican trucker anal. Trucker here. A few years back, I was traveling through Ute native land in New Mexico on Highway 491. 491 used to be Route 666, but they changed it a few years back. I think people were stealing the signs. Anyways, I'm in the middle of the desert around midnight. No lights or civilization for miles. When up in the sky, there's a huge orange flash. The orange flash quickly inflated into a giant ball bigger than the sun. It even had a fiery-looking texture to it. Suddenly, the orange ball disappeared, and the entire desert sky, horizon to horizon, flashed a bright yellow, lighting up everything around me like it was daytime. Then, everything went back to normal. This all happened within a few seconds, but it was definitely the weirdest thing I've ever seen on the road. Used to work in distribution at a bread plant, and there's one memorable experience involving a truck. Corporate just implemented this dolly-less loading system that involved putting product on tiny four-wheeled trolleys. You stack up your bread, pies, etc. onto trays that sit on these trolleys and roll them into the trailer. Easy as pie, no pun intended. Engineers had concluded that to hold back these stacks from flying out of the back, you'd install a strap every 2 rows of stacks, 4 stacks in a row. Well, corporate didn't send us enough of these straps, and we ran out of straps for 1 load, saved 2. Told our boss that we can't send a load because we didn't have enough, and he storms up to the dock, tells us lazy dog workers to just use the 2 straps at the back. So we did. It's not like they can't hold back 10,000 pounds of force or anything. Driver pulled out the load and got maybe 25 feet before physics took over. I saw the doors fly open and a 140 by 4 by 48 loaves of bread slide out the back like a waterfall. The 2 straps snapped right in half and flung into the wall of the trailer, making a 2-foot-long gash. The trailer itself lunged forward as if this mysterious force propelled it forward. It took 4 guys 8 hours to clean it all up. No trucks could enter or leave until it was either. This also happened around midnight, when all the long-haul drivers delivered the product to smaller distribution centers across the country for further distribution to stores. It rippled to other distribution centers, causing them to give away overtime to shippers after they basically sat around and watch TV for 8 hours, waiting for their loads. They even had to call a wrecking crew to pull the trailer aside. The sudden 20,000 pounds of force had damaged the frame so badly the driver refused to pull it. Customers got pissed off because their deliveries were late, arriving at midday. That all combined with the actual dollar value of the product, it probably cost them hundreds of thousands. They started taking me seriously after then. I was demoted to production. Grab the pens, load the pens, wipe the sweat. The boss got a nice promotion to a cushy office job. Then, there was this other time where a couple crackheads set a load on fire in our yard, and nobody noticed. There was a 50-foot tall fire out in the yard for hours. I loved working there, mostly for the huge amount of what the f*** you saw on a daily basis. I had to hop on the laptop for this one. No way in hell I'm typing all this out with swipe. TL, DR, supernatural stories, UFOs, poor lady who needed help, and trucker lights. It's mostly UFO supernatural stuff I've seen out on the interstate. Within the past few months of driving, if I recall correctly, was Pennsylvania. My first couple years I was a night driver, so it was hard to see things sometimes. But the one in PA was me trying to follow a flatbedder who was hauling serious ass through the mountains. At one point, I start to fall back because I can feel the van starting to lean. It wasn't long after that, I reach down and take a swig of the handy monster I had, and I look up, and there's a guy standing off the shoulder, just outside the trees. I enjoy the trucker stories, and like that, or first responders, real things. Pretty cool. So this was a good collection, and there's more to come. So enjoy, guys, and have a great weekend. See you tomorrow. Tree line wearing what appeared to be some type of soldier's uniform. Looked like Revolutionary War era. He had a musket as well. As I approach, I can see him staring right at me, and then he starts walking back into the tree line, still looking at me. Before he manages to make it through the trees to disappear, like literally vanishes into thin air, I had my windows down, and the air in the area got real cold. After about a mile, the air warmed up again. I had a really sad feeling come over me for a while afterwards. Needless to say, I didn't stop for the rest of my shift. New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah are some states that to this day I still see shit in the skies that I can't explain. Lights rapidly changing direction and taking off at blinding speeds, but no sound barriers broken. I've seen lights hovering over the desert several miles off the interstate, that it suddenly takes off and the lights are out. Various shapes and sizes from what I can make out. Again, night driver. I know military aircraft pretty well, and some of them more than likely were, but some of them absolutely cannot be any military aircraft currently in mainstream use. Conventional aircraft do not move like that. The most vivid one would be at an off-ramp in New Mexico. I stopped to take a piss and decided to turn it into a 15-minute break since my ass was sore anyway. As I'm stargazing and admiring how clear the sky is, I saw what looked like a formation of lights in the shape of a triangle lift off from the desert floor and then take off into the sky. I kept my eyes on it, and it just kept gaining altitude until the lights just disappeared. I look down at my watch and notice it's not ticking, so I pull out my phone and it's off. I turn my phone on, and according to the time on my phone, it had been 5 minutes since my watch stopped. I felt like whatever it was that just took off had something to do with it. Kent, Texas is another one. There's an old Chevron station, I think it is. Seems like FedEx drivers like stopping in there in droves. I'm guessing it's a popular drop-in hook point for them or something. But I stopped one day, and I need to take a piss. I don't know why I didn't stop in Van Horn, So I pull off and I roll up to the empty lot across the street. Kent is an abandoned town. I walk up to the bush line and notice a makeshift fire pit. The wood is somewhat burned, but not all the way. The weird thing is that there's an unscathed dollar bill stuck in the wood. For a second I was like, ooh, piece of candy. But then the sudden feeling of nope came over me. So I left it alone and pissed in the bush. As I'm walking back, I look over at it and get a real negative feeling. I look to the ground in front of me and bam, there's a rattlesnake looking right at me. I stop dead in my tracks and walk carefully around it, and it keeps staring at me. I ran as fast as I could back to my truck, feeling like somebody was behind me. I kicked up a lot of dust getting out of there, and have never stopped in Kent since. Missouri. I stopped at an off-ramp to stretch out and take a breather. As I'm smoking a cigarette, a little girl from some direction I couldn't figure out giggles and says, "Hi, mister." My initial reaction was, "The is a little kid doing out here at this time?" So I talk back and say hi. She then responds with, "My mommy says you'll be okay, don't worry." Now, utterly confused, I ask her what she means. No response. Then suddenly I feel like somebody is standing next to me, but it doesn't feel negative or bad. It just feels like somebody is there next to me. Since it didn't have a negative vibe to it, I just finished my cigarette and left. Later on down the road, I realized that I forgot to fuel up at my last stop when the warning light came on. So I scrambled to look at my GPS and find the nearest truck stop. I find one and set the course. As I roll up to the truck stop, my truck starts sputtering, and I barely make it to the fuel line before the truck starts dying. I ran out of fuel right as I got on the fuel line. It wasn't until I was fueling up that it occurred to me what the hell happened at my last stop. I've had many lot lizards try the good time routine with me. One in particular got up on my truck and started talking to me. Her breath was pretty bad. Not something I wanted to smell as I'm doing my logbook, getting ready to shut down. She tells me she'll give me the best BJ I've ever had. And for a second I think about it. Nope. Then for some reason she reaches down her spandex shorts and scratches herself deep. Ugh. Her hand comes back up onto the door. Ugh, and I could smell the most rancid crotch rot my nostrils have ever been blessed with. As politely as I could, I declined her services and told her that I really needed to get some sleep. She smiles and wishes me a good night, then hops on another driver's truck across the way. 10 minutes later, she's in his truck, and it's not long before you see the cab rocking. I ate my granola bar and noped out to the sleeper and went to bed. One occasion in Arizona, what the moment, a lady was begging for money, which isn't uncommon at truck stops. She gave me the whole sob story of her boyfriend left her, she didn't have a job, lost the apartment, her 2 kids were hungry, and she didn't know what to do. Me being a social creature, I let the conversation go on for some reason. To make it short, she was molested by her father as a child, hard on several occasions in her teen years, and then found a lesser of an evil boyfriend who tried to get her into drugs, got her pregnant, and beat her all the time. I hear this kind of stuff all the time, but just in case he was telling the truth, I gave her what I had in my pockets. It ended up being $40. She broke down and cried right there, and then I started to wonder that maybe she was telling the truth. She walked away. After some more small talk, I go inside to get dinner, and bigger than shit, I see her with 2 kids that look sad as can be getting dinner. They all look depressed. I knew that she wasn't lying about anything she told me, and I felt a lot of remorse for not doing more. So I told the waitress to put their meal on my tab. The look on her face when the waitress said that meal was being paid by someone else was a look I'll never forget. My cousin's a long-haul driver, and he reckons the scariest thing he's ever seen was his own rig on fire. He was driving at night somewhere in the northwest of Australia when he saw some sparks in his passenger wing mirror. He stopped to check it out and saw that the rim of one of his rear wheels was glowing red hot, because the wheel bearing had shat itself. Before he could even think, the tires burst into flames. He was unable to reach the fire extinguisher because of the flames, so he had to call the fire brigade and stand back. The prime mover and semi-trailer full of watermelon were engulfed by flames within a minute or two, and by the time the fireys showed up, they were completely destroyed. I drive a truck on a delivery route in a pretty rural part of Kentucky. Just today, I witnessed two black labs fighting in the middle of the road over something. Once I got a little closer, I could tell they were fighting tooth and nail over a severed deer foot. A few weeks ago, I was driving up to a farmer's house. Dude has a driveway that's about a mile long. I top the last little hill, and I see 3 owls sitting on his fence posts. That was kinda creepy, since it was dark. When they turned their heads in my direction, their eyes caught my headlights and lit up pretty bright. Probably the creepiest thing I've ever witnessed was when I drove by a house that was in the midst of being set ablaze by the owner's meth-addled brother. It was relatively late, around 10. All I see is a spark and then flames in my side mirror. I heard the next day that the brothers whose house was setting on fire came out and beat the dog shit out of his brother before putting the fire out. Scariest for me was a homeless dude getting pissed that I didn't give him money for food, offering food instead. He said the hot Cheetos bag I offered would tear up his stomach, but he just said he was eating from the garbage. So I was like, whatever. I shut the curtain, then heard a noise behind the truck. He's pounding and screaming. Tells me I shut the door in his face. How he'd never do that, blah blah. A handful of change makes him leave, and now I have a 40 cent on my hip when I park. Load bars, chains, and the spare were still there in the morning, so at least he didn't steal anything. I've seen him a couple times since. Not a trucker, but I have been a dispatcher for many years and have heard or seen many things unfold. One of my drivers, making a delivery at Family Dollar store in Detroit, had several black males robbed him at gunpoint, told the manager, "Give me the boxes, fat boy," and loaded up the back of the SUV with random Family Dollar shit. My driver asked if they were going to call the police, and the store employee said, "Nah, happens all the time." Another driver called me from the floorboard parked at a stoplight in Detroit and said he needed me to call the cops because kids were calling him cracker and throwing rocks at his truck. Had to instruct him to put on his big boy pants, get back in the driver's seat, and drive away. Saw live feed from Dallas terminal as trucks and trailers are flying through the air because an F5 tornado ran right over the Schneider yard. Had a driver end his life by driving his truck full of speed into Edwardsville, Illinois terminal, trying to take as many with him as possible. A driver yesterday told me on his return trip he saw and heard a family burning alive inside their vehicle, and there was nothing he could do to help. Apparently, there was a bad accident and something happened to cause the large fire, which very quickly engulfed their vehicle. They weren't able to get out, and he was one of the first to stop behind the accident and could hear them screaming. Another driver got distracted and didn't see traffic had stopped in front of him. He plowed into the back of another truck at about 60 miles an hour, and the entire cab of the truck looked through like an explosion had been set off from the inside. The bunker cabinets were on top of the cab. The passenger seat was gone. You could even tell it was a truck if it didn't have a trailer sitting behind it. He walked away without a single scratch. I'm sure there are plenty more stories that aren't coming to mind right now. In summary, truckers definitely have seen some shit. I was driving, Wisconsin I think, in the middle of the night on some 2-lane road, in between a couple small towns when I got passed by this minivan. It's about 4 a.m. and the road is pretty much deserted. About 3 or 4 minutes later, I see a car in my lane and it's smoking. No lights, and I hit the brakes and come to stop right behind it. That's when I notice that it's the minivan that passed me a few minutes earlier, and it has had a head-on collision with another car. I call 911 from my cell phone and tell the dispatcher where I am, and then I get out of my truck to see if I can help anyone. Both drivers are dead as far as I can tell. I didn't touch them, but they sure look dead to me. A few minutes later, several cop cars show up and they confirm that nobody has a pulse. Another time, I'm driving in the middle of the day on some interstate in Texas, I think. On a road sign ahead, I see what I think is an owl just sitting on top of this sign. Never seen an owl before, and never thought the first one I would see would be in the middle of the day for some reason. As I'm getting closer, I realize that sure enough, it's a rather large owl. Then right as I get near the sign, the owl flies off the sign, and then I hear this loud thump. I look in my mirrors and see feathers flying all around my truck on both sides. Stupid owl flew right into the airfoil thing on the top of my truck and committed suicide. One of my somewhat regular routes was delivering big barrels of cheese from Phoenix, Arizona into Wisconsin. What the hell is Wisconsin doing importing cheese from Arizona? Seriously, what the I was driving for Costco a few years back. It was around this time of year. We usually took an extra toy shipment to various locations due to the holiday season. We got a call that one of our locations in rural Kentucky needed to restock their giant Spider-Man dolls. They knew I was a fast driver, so I was given the last-minute late-night duty. I loaded my truck and headed out to 265. It was around 3 a.m. when I started to have this eerie feeling. I chalked it up to just being tired and popped a couple of no-dos. About 15 minutes later, the road started to fog up. I mean, more so than any other time before or since. I got to the point where I had to pull off to the side and wait. There wasn't any other cars on the road, and I was ahead of time, so I figured I could wait until it cleared up a bit. About 5 minutes of sitting still in silence, my truck goes dead. No lights, no engine, nothing. I tried to crank it, but it was like the battery was dead. I tried my CB, but cannot get anyone on. I checked my cell phone, and there's no signal. As I'm sitting there contemplating my next move, I hear what sounds like a child crying. It slowly morphed into a woman crying, or at least that's what it sounded like to me. Now I'm a big man, 6'3", 250, but I refused to exit my cab. I did roll down my window and asked if anybody needed help. At that point, the crying stopped. Then I heard what sounded like a sinister laugh. Oh. At that point, I felt like the laughter was directed at me. I rolled up my window, and it seemed like the more scared I became, the louder the laugh went. Then as soon as it started, it stopped. And just like that, my truck started back up, and the fog dissipated. I drove out of there like a bat out of hell. I get to the next truck stop and pull in. I run to the bathroom and pour water on my face and ask myself, did that just really happen? I go out to the diner and see this fella in a John Deere hat, red flannel and blue jeans. I needed to know if anyone else experienced that too. I go up to him and say, excuse me, are you a fellow trucker? Because I just had one hell of an experience. He says, not a trucker, but... There was a story on here a while back by a trucker who shared his creepiest experience while out on the road. It was getting very late and very dark, so he pulled into a rest area off the highway in the middle of nowhere. The place was totally empty, meaning there weren't any other vehicles or people there. While he was getting some shut-eye inside his truck, he heard a faint sound of a barking dog that seemed to get louder and louder as time went by. Eventually, the nasty barking sound was coming from right outside his driver's side door. As he got up to look in the window, he didn't see a rabid dog, but instead it was some crazy-eyed person looking directly at him, growling and trying to get in. He started the engine and got the heck out of there.